You're listening to Distraction Therapy. Conversations and sound walks at a time of change. With me, Rob Watson.
My name is John Costa, and I'm the director and founder of the Documentary Media Centre here in Leicester, and also the Parallel Lives Network. The Parallel Lives Network is a brand new project that we're hosting here at the Documentary Media Centre, and the aim is to take the existing contacts that we have across the Global South and create it into a network where people can join, become members, and then there's various things that they can access throughout the month that's going to help them hopefully in their communication. So it's to help them to communicate in a better way. What we discovered during lockdown in talking to people that we knew that were involved in grassroots social activism and were like smaller NGOs and charities or education groups or community groups is the fact that they tended to struggle with their social media or with their communications generally, to the point where those that probably would benefit from a website didn't have one because they were still using Facebook, because that was their main way of engaging with people, so therefore they'd not set themselves up a website. Or there were those with a website, one in particular that springs to mind that is full of flash, so that won't work anymore. So they've still got the content, but none of it's engaging, interactive. And then there's those that have obviously have been built a website by someone, but have been built a website that these person wanted to build them rather than the one they needed, which tends to happen when it comes to international development, which is, you know, people from countries doing things to people in developing countries. And so the conversations that we were having with people for the 2 24-hour newsrooms and things that we'd done around Parallel Lives, you know, people that were living at the same time as us in different countries, you know, across those 100 countries that we covered with the Parallel Lives archive, across the Global South, so South and Central America, the whole of Africa, the Middle East, South Asia and Southeast Asia, was the fact that everybody was struggling, you know, with their communications. And so they were so busy doing, as smaller organisations tend to be, that they're not part of networks or don't have the time to look at their communications plans. I don't mean fancy strategies or anything like that, you know, lots of pages, but more about, you know, wouldn't Instagram be much better than the way that they were engaging people, trying to use Twitter badly, actually keep that for maybe supporters and overseas engagement and that kind of stuff, following people, what's going on in your sector or region, but use Instagram as a way of engaging people in a much more visual way. Because everybody thinks, well, if I take photos, I've got to put them on Photobucket or Flickr or stuff. I only put them on Twitter or Facebook. Use them in a better way. And so when I sat down and thought about it, Tina and I were talking, and she said, well, why don't we create a network where we have a website that people can send their news into us that's important to them. On you know, whenever they've got something on they want to share, then we can put it out through the website. And we've set up a Facebook page, we've set up a Twitter page, we've set up an Instagram as well for the Parallel Lives Network, so we can share that content in their words and in their own ways and the ways they want to do it, and then organise our own events. So rather than having our own newsrooms and news days and news desks and all that kind of stuff, why don't we work with network members to be able to say, well, actually, you know, we've got this World Photography Day coming up in August. We've got an organisation called the World Awareness for Children in Trauma. They've just set themselves up as a CIC formally. You know, they've been an informal network. 16 members, I think 11 of which are in the Global South. But they've got 4 main ones. So we've been talking to the 4 main ones about, well, one of the benefits of being a member of the network would be, why don't we all contribute 2 hours of content for this 8-hour news desk that we're going to do. World Photography Day just happens to be the backdrop. And it's completely galvanised their network to the point where the organisation in Brazil and the one in Kenya and the one in South Africa and the one in Pakistan have all engaged their staff team, volunteers, their service users, working from street children through to children, trauma from, being shot at by the government and by the police recently. And it's been fantastic, and it's a real privilege and a real honour to work with those guys. But of course, at the end of it, the idea is we've had a great event, but we're now having that conversation about, well, what comes next? So for each of those organisations, it might be one of them in particular needs the website. So we could find someone that can do the website for them. So that's someone doing either a live brief, a student, or someone that wants to do some meaningful volunteering in a way that's not about standing there, but using their own skills that they want to do. Through to, well, actually, why don't we do a smaller news event for them? Because we've got all this content now, what can we do next? Well, the ones in South Africa are very keen on setting up a media training centre for their new youth hub that they've got. Well, that's similar to something that we're doing in Bangladesh and we want to do in Thailand. So we suddenly realised that there was a lot of commonality across all of those locations, which we've kind of lost in the developed world, if you like. You know what I mean? We kind of look at America, or America looks at us, or we look at Europe and Europe looks at us, or we'll look at Australia or New Zealand. Whereas, in fact, when you look at across the global south, because everybody's doing their own thing normally at the same level, it's easier to turn around and say, well, actually, what's working in Botswana would probably work really well in Brazil, and what's working in Chile would probably work really well in Cambodia. And the response I've had from sending out the website to various people across the global south that were going to be like the founding members, if you like, has just been, wow, that's amazing. Look at the quality of the content that's already on there, but we can now see the benefit to us of getting involved. Yeah, I thought the best way of doing the network was to have a range of people involved. It will avoid, it won't exclude, but it will tend to avoid the bigger charities that you and I would be able to name. Well, simply because, if we can name them, they're already doing a good job, aren't they, I guess? So this is about organisations that are never going to be, they might be on the receiving end of a bit of funding from someone, but that'll probably be someone doing a bit of something to their wall, or giving them a bit of equipment, or doing something to them or for them rather than with them, which again is one of the downfalls of the international development sector, really. So we came up with an idea of the three kinds of people could be involved in a network, and it's all free. It's all free to join. There's no point trying to monetize these kind of things, build them, and then sort of look to fund it in a much more creative way. So the first one is obviously an organisational member. So that will probably be a smaller NGO that's working on the ground, or part of a network that I already know. So we mentioned, the World Awareness for Children in Trauma. They benefit from knowing people that are working with children in trauma. But what they've got the benefit of being part of Parallel Lives. They've now got that kind of media support, if you like. So there's the smaller NGOs, local charities, education groups as well, those working in an educational setting, maybe running schools, educational outreach, and also community groups as well. That might be in an informal settlement in Nairobi or something. They've set up their own library, and try. So that's one particular member, an organisational member, and then you've got your individual members. Now this might be someone who is, is like an activist themselves. Or an industry practitioner or an issue expert, which tends to be from lived experience. They maybe work for someone, but they've got their own organisation they run, which is just them and a few people feeding street children, for example. It's very informal, no real structure to it. So we can help maybe with a little bit of governance advice, how to set up and that sort of stuff. Researchers. Yeah, lots of people about, wanting to do research. So people that are into action-based research or practice-based research. So in the right way, I want to know why they want to be involved. It's not about them using people, taking loads of information and then helping themselves. It's like, well, what are you bringing to the network? It's not just what you can take from the network. And I'll be very strict about that as well, because, a lot of these people are being used and exploited by organisations and individuals from an academic environment or in the charity sector, international development sector. So that's one of the things I'm really keen on, is that doesn't happen. And then finally, I think, volunteers. And so, we've been running a very successful DocFolio programme here as well. I think, we've had 5 young people since February have done 252 hours of volunteering, I think. With Tina here from the projects that we're doing around sort of heritage and stuff. So we want to see how we can build on our experience of doing live briefs with university and college students, and then marry that with people that are maybe, self-employed podcasters, YouTubers and stuff, who want to volunteer, but in a way where they understand what it is that their time's for. Well, the thing is that, the idea behind the DocFolio program is we'll match you up with someone. You could make a podcast for them. You could build a YouTube channel for them. You could build a website for them, and they're going to use it. So it's not just exploitation. I'll give you this, you get on with it. It comes with some sort of connectivity as well. That little and often volunteering experience tends to be much better than the 2 weeks going to Zambia and building an orphanage and stuff, all of which is very laudable, but doesn't necessarily help with what you want. So it's an individual member or an organisational member. Like I said, the most important thing is it's free, and that they are taking something out of the network as well as giving something to the network, because that way it becomes a meaningful relationship, and then people want to stay involved and maybe hopefully go and visit again, but not in that kind of volunteerism kind of exploitative way, but actually, I built you this website, what could we do? Let's go and create some content. And then the third and final way of being involved is not so much as a member, but more as a sort of associate supporter, I call them. It's actually quite difficult to give all of these things names, because then you're thinking, well, that just reminds me of that, or that reminds me of that. So you have to be very careful. So associate supporter, and that's someone that can provide information, advice and guidance in support of network members. So that could be someone that can give some governance advice, someone who can give some, fundraising advice. That could be someone who's got previous experience of working in the international development sector, maybe in the field, in the country or region they are, but can give them some advice about how best to approach a donor or something like that, if that's what they're looking to do. It could be someone that's able to give advice as in, I can get anybody to this point with a website or a little bit of training, might want to support one of the news days, for example. And so there should be something in it for everybody to be able to get out of it. But the most important thing is that the members that are the organisation members, in particular, the ones that are doing this kind of where the rubber meets the road kind of work, feel as if being part of the network is of benefit to them. So we've kind of got a whole range of benefits, if you like, one of which is this kind of monthly briefing. We tried to come up with a way of it not seeming like, hey, this is what you need to do. So the idea would be very similar to some stuff that we've done, over lockdown, is, running something, say, on Zoom, which we would record, which would be, if that month, for example, I'd done 2 1-hour interviews with people in different locations, is play like 5 minutes of each one, say to people it's up on YouTube, give them a little bit of context, why it's worth them looking at it, maybe some information from the network that we've pulled out, and put it there. And it's a private link on YouTube. So, one of the things you get as a member, it's not you and everybody else can watch it, only you can watch it as a network member. And you can share that with people that recommend people to join, all of your staff, team and volunteers. It's not about only the named content, it's contact. It's more about that there's a benefit to being involved. So that was that one, so calling it a briefing, really. And then the other main one, I guess, apart from sharing their news and having that pumped out through all the social media channels, is this kind of learning. So we spent a bit of time, quite a lot of time, talking about training. You know what I mean? And as you know, Rob, you and I and Tina and Jurian, we'd done training for the Y Heritage Project and and all these kind of things. But training always comes a bit like the briefing, really, which is you have to be on time and you have to attend and you have to get involved. So how can you get something out of that training if you can't be there? Well, difficult thing is it's not about can you be there, attendance, language, technology, Wi-Fi, electricity, connection, all that sort of. It's just the fact that everybody's on a different time zone. So you're never going to get someone from Brazil and someone in Cambodia in a training session without them having to be inconvenienced in the way they're running their organisation. So we came up with the idea of doing a learning thing, which is a bit like the briefing. So half an hour, 40 minutes, come on, we can host it for you. You don't have to do it yourself. Come on, and just share good practice, share practice that works, not best practice, share practice that works for you. Explain why it works, explain, how you could make it better, what other people could do, things that you'd like to do and stuff like that. And then the idea is we called it learning, so it goes into some sort of learning and knowledge exchange. And so people can then, again, with that private link as being a member, be able to get in touch with us and say, look, I've got this particular project, I've got this challenge, how could you help us with this? And we might say, well, actually, we've got this 40-minute thing that was done by someone on this continent about this. Let's hook you up with someone that's looking to volunteer with an organisation that's working with children in trauma, and we'll see if we can find you an associate supporter that maybe could actually give you some advice about how to put that ethics program together, how to put that sort of safeguarding program together, that kind of stuff. So being that connector, I guess that's what I do, as John Costa. I've always done that as Citizens Eye, the Dot Media Centre, and now with the Parallel Lives Network. It's just a formalised way or a structured way or a formal way of doing that, beyond me just doing that anyway, which is, I guess, like I said, what I always do. It's now done in a way that people can understand it. And then there's events they can join, like World Photography Day and all that kind of stuff. And then hopefully just see what happens, and just let it roll out naturally. Don't try and force it. Do something every month. Here's the news, here's the briefing, here's what people have learnt. If someone's got something to suggest, great, let's give it a go, let's give it a try. And the feedback that I've had has been fantastic, and any of the feedback that wasn't fantastic was great, but it was more about oh, right, I didn't realise that. If you'd have said, I could have done that for you. so it's always nice to receive feedback that's not fantastic, because it's actually, well, if you'd have asked me, I could do this for you. So it's even better. Sometimes it then becomes brilliant, you know. So it's a real challenge. And like I said, there's no membership involved, and there's no funding. We've not got any funding from any organisation to do it. It just seemed the best way of formalising for us something that is, we're already doing through our own natural interest in connecting people. If anything, it was just a way of pulling what we were doing as volunteers together as a structured way. the thing that's got the most feedback from people as, you know, why they're interested and what they'd like to get out of it and stuff, or you know, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's tech. So, you know, I think if you make everything revolve around WhatsApp, it's incredible use of WhatsApp for connecting. Not so much Messenger, Facebook, you know, pages and groups as well. Certain people are still using that. So, you know, young people that we know and we teach and we engage with in various projects, they've all moved on from Facebook. Whereas in fact, Facebook is still, you know, all dominant and all pervasive for people to be able to share their information, particularly across the global south. And there's certain locations as well within the global south, many countries where if you asked your average person, the internet is Facebook, because they get free mobile phones or free access to the internet as long as they stay within Facebook. And of course, that's a bit of an anathema to us. We wouldn't really understand that because we've got loads of choice. But if you think the internet is Facebook, that's quite an interesting conversation, isn't it? In a separate podcast, maybe. But I'd say, is it different from a pre-pandemic world, what people would want and what they would do? Yes and no. Yes, from the point of view that I think they've realised now that we're more connected than ever. For those of us that are, you know, socially aware, engaged in helping, you know, people overseas to be better, help themselves to be better, you know, not do things to them, but, you know, co-produce things with them and cooperate with them in a meaningful way. It's the fact that now, through connections and through Zooms and stuff like that, there is no reason why we can't listen to the voices of people. You know, so, you know, someone from one of the big international aid agencies should not be sitting around having a conversation about what they're going to go and do in the country without having people in that country there in the room, part of that conversation in real time. You know, not commenting on what you're going to do, but actually helping you to co-produce what you're doing. So there's, yes, definitely better. No, from the fact that, well, these situations have always been there. You know, they're things that are known. They're not new. There's nothing new. If anything, the pandemic's probably for the first time levelled the playing field. It's affected us all in different ways, don't get me wrong. But it just means that for the first time, you know, for some people, a life-changing event might only be mildly inconvenienced to you now. But if we were to turn around and say, well, let's have a conversation about the impact of COVID on us with a group of 20 people from different places across the whole planet now, not just a continent, the whole planet, then the chances are there will be some commonality between our experiences. And that might be restrictions of whatever that is, or not being able to work, or, you know, good or bad government support, you know, good or bad access to education, good or bad response to health, yes or no when it comes to the vaccine. But for the first time, that's a commonality. So it's kind of very much like a global conflict. I think you could probably have a conversation about COVID now that you could with people in 1945 about the impact of World War II on everybody. Whereas up until this point, it's always been around, you know, how's this impacted you? Ebola, you know, Zika, that kind of stuff, you know, climate change, flooding, terrorism attacks and stuff like that. So you're always going to have someone around the table that can't understand because they've not experienced it. Whereas I think, you know, for the first time, you know, we can have someone from the US, Australia, New Zealand, Europe and Britain and France and places like that all sitting around the table now, being able to understand the impact of something like COVID on anybody in the global south. Not to that extent, but for the first time ever, it's impacted everybody. So I think that for me, that's the opportunity. Really, the opportunity now is to, how do we use communications? How do we use all the tools that are there, are free and stuff like that, to be able to establish this network? And that's exactly what we've done without needing money to set something up. So let's set something up and then prove that this is the information that we can find, this is the evidence that we've got, that if we had money to not create a new or a better network, but actually help people to get to a certain level where we're all accessing Wi-Fi or electricity or, you know, solar power in a certain way, well, I think that's how learning's going to happen, you know, and education, you know, great.
Take me out tonight, where there's music and there's people who are young and alive. just could not. Take me out tonight. Take me anywhere, I don't care. Just driving in your car. I never wanna go home because I haven't got one. Oh, I haven't got one. And if a double-decker bus crashes into us tonight by your side, such a heavenly way to die. And if a 10-ton truck kills the both of us tonight by your side, the pleasure and the privilege is mine. There's a light that never goes out. There's a light that never goes out. There's a light that never goes out.
Probably the one thing that would bring everybody around the table to the same conclusion, it's about how they're represented in the media. So, as soon as you empower someone to own and shape their own narrative, tell their own story, they share their own experiences, just because you've done that and it's been done by them, it doesn't necessarily mean anybody's going to pay any more attention or engage or even support at the end of the day. Someone being bombed today live streamed, from Yemen through any social media platform is not going to impact governmental policy when it comes to that kind of stuff. It might motivate some conversations amongst a group of people, or maybe some charity workers or something, but it's not going to bring about real change. So it's then thinking about, well, actually, from a documentary point of view, as a documentarian, you're capturing what that experience is. Okay, so which is very different from news, isn't it? I'm not telling you what's going on now. What I'm telling you is I'm capturing my experience in order for it to be archived, so it adds to that body of evidence that can then be used in the future, or or even in the criminal court, maybe in the internet at The Hague. So there's that kind of communication as in capturing that content, but then it's also saying, well, if the mainstream media is at the top and is telling us what's important because of its involvement with politics and big business and that kind of stuff, governments, and they're playing in that social media space, which is about who we should talk to and who we like and who we don't like, then community media is a way of giving people those skills to be able to shape and own their own narrative and share it using free tools, simple tools that can then be shared in that same social media space. So anybody that's looking at what maybe the mainstream media is saying, at least is getting some kind of balance when it comes to, well, actually this has come up from someone using community media. But I always say to them as well, it's not just about sharing it through social or digital media, it's also about making sure it's archived and that it's kept, because this is the biggest thing. You capture this content in your own platform, you share it through social media, but if someone has missed it, then they're never going to be able to probably find it again. So the idea behind being in the network is that content that you've created is then distributed across the network to be seen in things like, documentary media festivals and shared with students. So if there's a student at a university that's in Brazil and Iraq and Thailand, suddenly they're starting to learn about these issues from someone that's comparable to them as an individual. You know what I mean? So it's not always that kind of white guy owning the narrative. John Costa says this. It's about, well, actually, that person's 18, 19, 25, 35, like me, similar to me, family like me, experiencing these things in a very similar way. I think, there's a real genuine opportunity, and I might be, a bit of a dreamer and stuff like that, but, why not? There's so many people that aren't. So, just thinking about the fact that across the global south, the fact that all of these people know that each other exists actually makes it quite powerful, because then, we know we're never going to beat the mainstream media. We know we're never going to beat, and we have to think in combative terms, because that's exactly how they think about people in the global south. They're there to be exploited and extracted and used, and maybe the sheer numbers of people as well means that you don't have to worry about what they're called or what their own personal experiences are, because they're just a body count. They're a number. They're useful when it comes to the machine that eats people that is capitalism. So if all these people here suddenly realised that they were connected, and there was a way that they could be connected, and the Parallel Lives Network obviously is a very small part of that. I'm not naive, but for those people to suddenly realise, and I've seen the impact on those 4 organisations where they've gone from being members of the World Awareness for Trauma and Children, WASIT organisation, this new CIC, to actually being aware of what each of them is actually doing, that's gone beyond we work with children in trauma. It's like, this is what we do. Well, actually, we could share that. That's great. But it's through the power of photography, with the wording that's attached to it, the caption, that kind of stuff. It doesn't become about big, lengthy, words and tomes and books and things like that. It's about, let's caption some photographs with young people that are living on the street. It's not about you have to write a blog. It's not about that. And of course, they've all, those that have, and they've been very good at accessing in Brazil some funding from UNICEF to get smartphones and stuff. Well, suddenly, you can put an half decent smartphone in the hand of a young person. One, they'll probably be able to teach themselves. That's one of the other things about all young people seem to be digital natives and able to use media equipment, is the fact that suddenly when it's about this is me, you're filming yourself, you're audioing yourself, you're photographing yourself, you're photographing those around you, and you're filming those around you. Suddenly, even if the only thing that comes out of that is this is me, and for the first time I understand my place in the world, I'm not a number, I'm not a statistic, I'm not a tribe, I'm not a person at the bottom. I've actually got the ability to do that. And if any one of those young people then turns around and says, well, I'm going to do something about it, then really that's how we actually improve the situation. And we help people across the global south, is when they realise that actually all they need is their own permission, not the permission of anybody else, because they've given them a campus from their university to come and help and educate them and stuff. I think the connection between Leicester and any of these places really is for the people that are involved, for themselves to understand and to work out. But I give you a really simple example. I've got two women, one older and one younger, that are based here in Leicester. Both work in language. Both are involved in, lots and lots of paperwork, because all of their language, English for a second language, or English as a foreign language, is all about employability and skills and passing this and getting that exam in order to get a better job and stuff like that. And so I've created this fast forward language service as part of the Parallel Lives Network, which means that I've hooked them up with people, and we've just run a successful pilot in Iraq, and we're about to do a few more, whereby the level of education in Iraq is already quite high, so people have got the ability to speak and converse in English quite well. They've moved beyond where is the post office, can I buy some bread, to actually, this is how I feel, this is what I'd like to do, which is a very kind of different way of learning any kind of language. So what we're doing is we piloted some stuff where it was specifically for this employment, where they were working, and the next ones that we're doing are around English for media. So the idea is you have to do some stuff where you build up to learning some knowledge, look at various things that you can do, using my Learn, Access, Build lab model that I always teach with. So you'll be learning some stuff for a period of time, then you're at where you can access it, things to watch on YouTube, look at on a TED Talk maybe, a podcast, something to read. And then you start building your skills and your portfolio to the point where in the last session you actually run a round table conversation with invited guests that come from the network, so that actually you get a portfolio piece if you want to work in the media. And so I'm working with this with the government, of a provisional government in Iraq, around getting women into the media. And that's very much around the fact that they're able to do that because they've actually got some experience. So rather than going, give me a job, I'm interested in the media because I think I could do this because I've done this course. It's I've done this course and I've created this. Would you like to listen to it? And they go, oh, wow, that's interesting. You actually know what you're talking about. But then it's sharing that practice with like what, Bazlu's doing in Bangladesh with the NGO there. So they've got a new fellowship program that starts on the 1st of August. 18 community radio stations, 2 women from each of those radio stations with a mentor, paid. It's a paid fellowship for 4 months. So I'm going to be involved in that, and the network will be involved in that, because it's about, at the end, they've created some content that can be shared across the network about being a young woman for that community radio station in Bangladesh. When you get a sense of place, that's so powerful, because you suddenly realise you're not defined about who you are and where you're from. It's suddenly you exist, you know what I mean? And I think what the conversations I've had with people over the years that has led to this really is that these very people also exist in Leicester because they're out of place, because Leicester is well known as a place for, welcoming new arrivals and stuff. So we have a whole range of people from conflict zones and all across the world where, literally, you could, all the places that we've got in the global south behind me, those 100 plus countries, including, the Middle East, those people are here in Leicester as well. So suddenly you've got people locally that are suddenly finding their voice because they can contribute to something that's going on back home for whatever reason they're here, whether that's conflict or they've migrated, jobs, whatever. I think that's what's really important. People suddenly realise that whether you're in Leicester or whether you're back in where you were from, you're able to contribute to the Parallel Lives Network, because it's still about your sense of self-worth and your place in the world and what your experiences are, and sharing that information. So it's not what to do and what not to do. It's about, this is what happened to me and what, good and bad, and sharing that kind of information and knowledge. And I think that's where, being in Leicester, I don't suddenly feel as if I need to be anywhere else, because Leicester's almost like the perfect place to do it. Now, we've been asked to set up been given some space at the university that we went to, Khon Kaen University in Thailand. They want to allocate some space to set up a dot media centre, and the possibilities for doing that. Now, I could sit here and go, well, we've got no money, and this university halfway around the world has given us space to look at recreating, a room probably like this over there. Well, that's fantastic, because all you actually need is the enthusiasm to do it. Everything else you'll be able to find. Money is no different to finding the films to go in the archive, the students to attend, and someone to build you the website for the archive. And so I kind of approach things like money and finances in a very similar way, which is, rather than we can't do this because we need the money, it was like, well, actually, let's set up and do and have a structure for what's needed. Money will just be one of those things that we need, just like tea and biscuits and people and bits of paper. Well, again, that comes back to the local and international, I guess, isn't it? So as an international organisation, then, you can drop us an email. I think it's info@theparallellives.net, and just say, look, this is what we're interested in doing. Can we get involved? And the answer's not about yes or no. It's more about, well, what do you think you'll get out of it, and what would you like to contribute? I think if a student came to us now at one of the universities locally here in Leicester or anywhere in the UK, it's more about what is it you'd like to get out of it, So, like I said, rather than that 2 weeks volunteering somewhere in a physical space, it might be, well, actually, I'd like to, for the whole of next term, do some social media support for someone, or give some photography training, because I'm really in photography, but I'm learning Spanish. It's amazing. And, both you and I have experienced this over the years, haven't we, of teaching at DMU, and you longer than me, is the fact that, you might work on media production and communication arts, but actually some of the best photographers, filmmakers and media producers you'll find are doing languages and health and life sciences and doing a business course. So it's finding people that want to do like live briefs and volunteering opportunities, but in a way where they get something out of it, which is actually making something for someone they know is they're going to use, and therefore it's actually going to make a difference. And I think what we need to get to the point now where it's about being more effective with our time. It's amazing, isn't it? So a lot of people at the beginning of lockdown were like, oh, I'm learning a language, I'm learning to play a guitar, I'm learning to do this and all that. And of course it all fades away for the vast majority of people, because it ends up being a vanity project, because it's more about signalling what you're doing through your social media, actually, rather than just doing it because that's exactly what you want to do. So the amount of people that turn around, I don't have the time to do that, but now I've got the time to do it. How many of those actually completed that task? So if we turn around and say to someone, look, if you've got like 2 hours a week, and you want to contribute the price of a cup of coffee, then this is the impact that price of that cup of coffee can make. And your 2 hours could actually completely change an organisation's way of communicating with the outside world and how they represent themselves, because their website ain't great. Do you want to help out? And it's something that's within the realms of what you need to do. Well, if that person then goes away feeling really good about that, you've got people at both ends of that transaction who are happy, but the chances are the person that's in the more developed situation, not in the better situation, but in the country that's maybe more settled without the challenges of the person you're helping in the global south, the chances are you'll stay involved. Why? Because, I'm not being funny, that's you might want the dopamine that you've just had from your social media experience of learning to play the guitar from actually continuing to help these people, but on their terms. So suddenly, the next website you build won't be exactly the same, because it'll be something different. And the life skills are, well, have you listened to what that person wants? Because you're saying to me you can do the same again, but is that what they want? And so you end up educating people all round, and everybody benefits. I'd like to think one of the best things that could come out of it would be they can go on the website, which I'm incredibly proud of, which is theparallellives.net. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that was built for me for free, because I'm very good at connecting and networking people, with Mohammed from Syndro, who built Citizens Eye. And so when I explained to him, if there's a Citizen 2.0, Citizens Eye 2.0, is the Parallel Lives Network it? Probably, because there's no reason why we can't have local content on it, because it's about putting it on there in context where it's showing you that in fact we are all connected. If we'd have had this conversation 18 months ago about setting up the Parallel Lives, would it be a different conversation? Well, of course, because for the first time actually I don't have to convince people that we've all been through a similar experience, or imagine you were on the receiving end of a tsunami, imagine you were receiving end of a drought or climate change or conflict. For the first time people can actually understand a little bit more. I think people are a little bit calmer and a little bit more willing to have that conversation and engage with you in the fact that, I kind of understand that, I could understand that. I'm not saying isolation here in the UK, because you can't leave your house because of lockdown, is anywhere near what some people have experienced across the global south. But for the first time, I think we've slowed down enough. We've had our routine, our capitalist-driven social media engagement routines disrupted enough that we can actually, do you know what? I really need to do that. One final thing, actually, just on the news this morning, saying about nearly half of the people were less interested in their careers now in the UK because of the pandemic. It suddenly made them realise actually they've kind of snapped out of the fact that the 9 to 5, 5 day a week kind of rat race kind of thing. And you think, well, it's tragic and it's terrible what's happened, and we've been on the receiving end of a governmental experiment which I think is still ongoing, and so we're not out of the woods yet, and obviously people have died, and it's some real serious implications. But I think in 20, 30 years time, will our young people that have been affected by a disruption in education and universities and schools be better off? Maybe. It will be the great disruption. In some ways for worse, but in other ways for better. I think so. We just have to kind of play the hand that we're dealt, really.
Peace of mind, if I got it, your love brought it.
You've been listening to Distraction Therapy with me, Rob Watson. Find out more at robwatsonmedia.net or follow me on Instagram and Twitter at RobWMedia.